Welcome to Social Elo Ministries, where we are committed to glorifying God while exposing the devil. Philippians 2:12 tells us to work out our own salvation with fear and trembling. And there's good reason for that. A lot of people go to churches, or maybe they listen to sermons elsewhere, but it prevents them from having a truly personal relationship with the Lord. Because quite frankly, they don't want to spend time with the Lord in prayer, reading the Bible, so they prefer to receive from others. And some people may feel good about themselves because they're what we call submitted to a pastor. In Hebrews 13:17, it states, "Obey them that have rule over you, and submit yourselves, for they watch for your souls, as they that must give account, that they may do it with joy, and not with grief, for that is unprofitable for you." So it's talking about submitting to leadership. But I caution you, before you submit to anyone, ensure that you know which God that person is submitted to. Before you submit to anyone, it's very important that you know which God the person is submitted to. A lot of ministries teach us errant doctrine about spiritual covering, when truly the only spiritual covering a person needs is the Holy Spirit of the Lord. But if you're submitted to someone and you're calling that person your spiritual covering, it is a bad thing for you if that person is actually serving the devil, because ultimately that's the one who's quote unquote covering you. So it is very important to know when you submit to someone who that person is submitted to, which God is that person truly serving. If that minister is primarily focused on money, that is a clear sign that that person is submitted to Mammon, the god of money. There are a lot of ways to tell who a minister is truly submitted to. In 2 Corinthians 11, starting verse 13, "For such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into the apostles of Christ." And not just apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, teachers, and a host of other religious titles. And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. Therefore, it is no great thing if his ministers, the devil's ministers, also be transformed as the ministers of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their works. So again, before you submit to anyone, ensure that you know who they're submitted to. It's like having a computer and plugging it into a network that has an infected server. The moment you retrieve something from a server is the moment you risk infecting your computer. In 2 Peter 2, starting the first verse, "But there were false prophets also among the people, even as there shall be false teachers among you, who privily shall bring in damnable heresies, even denying the Lord that brought them, and bring upon themselves swift destruction. And many shall follow their pernicious ways, by reason of whom the way of truth shall be evil spoken of. And through covetousness shall they with feigned words make merchandise of you, whose judgment now of a long time lingereth not, and their damnation slumbereth not." A minister can really only take you where he or she is going. So please be careful about who you're quote unquote submitting to. Know which God that person is serving. I mean, truly serving. In Revelation 2 verse 2 it says, and this is Jesus, I know thy works, and thy labor, and thy patience, and how thou canst not bear them which are evil. And thou hast tried them, which say they are apostles, and are not, and hast found them liars. Has found them liars. They say they're apostles, they say they're prophets, they say they're evangelists. What's their title is? Try them. See which God they're serving. 1 John 4:1 tells us about believe not every spirit, because not every spirit is of God. And it gives you the reason about many false prophets, many false teachers, etc. It's very important to identify which God a person is submitted to before you submit to them. Because if you're submitting to a person who's submitted to the devil, then you in turn are submitting to the devil. And I will close this with something Jesus said. And it is very important that you do not find yourself in this position. And especially if the Lord gives you clear sign or signs that the person you're submitted to is not of him and you need to get out. In Matthew 7, starting verse 20, or correction, 21. Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name, and in thy name have cast out devils, and in thy name done many wonderful works? And then will I profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. So Jesus will tell many so-called ministers that he never knew them. You do not want to find yourself in a position where you're saying, Lord, Lord, and Jesus is looking at you like, who are you? Please develop a personal relationship with the Lord. In fact, let me give you an example of what is expected of us. In Acts 17, verse 10, it states, And the brethren immediately sent away Paul and Silas by night into Berea, who coming thither went into the synagogue of the Jews. And in the 11th verse, These were more noble than those in Thessalonica, in that they received the word with all readiness of mind, and searched the scriptures daily, whether those things were so. Paul and Silas, they would preach, and the Bereans would check the scriptures to ensure that they were preaching sound doctrine. Do not get in the habit of simply ingesting everything a so-called minister presents to you in the name of the Lord. Check it against the scriptures. And just don't look at the text. Also look at the context and the co-text. Like many ministers will talk about tithing, and they all quote in Malachi 3 where it's talking about, will a person rob God? And say, how will you rob God? In tithes and offerings. But they won't give you the full story about tithes and offerings, how tithes actually came about, who tithes were meant for, how people give to churches under the new covenant. But they'll bring up Old Testament things. Things under the law to put you in bondage. So know who you're submitted to. Know who you're submitted to. Because in some cases, many of those ministers will find out, if they don't already know, that the Lord did not send them. The Lord did not send them. Before you plug yourself into an infected network, run a virus scan, so to speak. And never allow any minister to make you feel as if you are in bondage to that ministry. And also be careful if you had to sign up for a membership to a religious organization and the rules that they want you to adhere to. Be discerning. Be discerning. So again, before you submit to a minister, know who that minister is submitted to. And no, I'm not referring to who the higher minister that minister is quote unquote submitted to. I'm referring to which God that minister is submitted to. God bless you.